That brings us to our item number 11, which is our superintendent's report, and I will turn it over to Dr. Hefner for that. Dr. Hefner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. We have a number of reports that we wish to update you on this evening. Lots of great and wonderful things happening here in the present, but we're also planning for the future. And during the past several months, we have sought and received an outside study called the Future Ready Study, looking specifically at our technology here in the district, making sure we are positioning ourselves for success in the future. And so here to give us a report on that this evening is Jenny Garris, who is our Director of Technology. Ms. Garris.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Gant, board members, Dr. Hefner, and executive staff. Tonight I'll give you a report on the Future Ready work that we started this past April and our progress since then. Okay. Future Ready is a free, I'll say free again, free comprehensive self-evaluation. It was developed by the Alliance for Excellence in Education, which is a nonpartisan advocacy group, and they focus on transforming schools so that they meet the needs of every child to make them college and career ready. So of course that aligns very well with what we try to do here in District 5 and in South Carolina. The goal of Future Ready is to help districts prepare a comprehensive plan that will help them transform teaching while simultaneously leveraging technology to personalize learning in the classroom. The Future Ready framework is made up of 7 gears, and you can see the graphic that they've designed that really illustrates those 7 gears. This model gives us an accurate visual, and it takes all these gears working together for students to learn effectively. And if you'll notice in the center of the gear, it says personalized student learning. So of course that's the center of everything we do, so this model was a nice fit for us. Each of the 7 gears then surround the student, and you'll see that on the outside of the gears, there are 2 more vital components of the framework. There's the cycle on the outside of the gears that start with a vision, that go to plan, implement, assess, and refine, and then start back over with vision. So it's that continuous cycle of planning and improvement. And then on the outside of all of that is collaborative leadership. So collaborative leadership encompasses everything that's going on inside of the gears. Future Ready partners with many, many organizations and companies, and the graphic here just shows some of them, not all of them. And you can always go to futureready.org to see the site, to see all the others. But I think you'll recognize some of these companies here, the logos: Common Sense Education, ISTE, National School Boards Association, and many others that are very commonly known in the education realm. Last April, we started and we brought together a rock star team from across the district. And you can see those team members listed there in the schools or the departments that they represented at that time. And our goal in bringing this team together was to have administrators, teachers from different schools, age levels, backgrounds, technology personnel, district office staff. If you recognize even a few of the names from the list, you'll know that we had a powerful room of people sitting there on this team. And our team was led by Tom Murray. Tom is a very dynamic, inspiring speaker, but he also has a real perspective on the challenges that we face in public schools because he was a teacher, an administrator, a principal, a technology director in public schools. So he was great for us. He also is the co-author of a book that I put up there that we provided a copy for every person on the district team, and they were very, very happy to get that book. It was really good. The process that district team went through was very collaborative. We spent 2 days with the district team and we discussed every single gear of that assessment, and we rated ourselves based on the various aspects, and there were subtopics within those gears. The fascinating part of this process, if you could have been in the room, was to listen to the conversations at all the different tables. The groups were mixed so that it gave secondary administrators the option or the ability to talk to elementary teachers, which just rarely happens because those groups don't mix and mingle. And so it was incredible to have that quality time to discuss teaching and learning from all different perspectives, and everyone left with a sense of a better understanding and a sense of purpose in what we're doing. The results after the self-assessment was complete are shown here in this bar graph. And at first glance, when you look at this, the bar graph shows it's out of 10. And when we first finished the assessment and it generated this report, we were a little surprised because curriculum and instruction and assessment was a 5 out of 10, and that was a little surprising. I was actually a little afraid for Dr. Melton to see those results when they first came up. But use of space and time also, those two things, I know we all put our eyes there first, but what is worth noting here is when you dig down into those gears, this is looking at transformational learning. So it's looking at how do you use your space and time that's outside the box of traditional schools. The same with curriculum and instruction and assessment. How do you do things that are transforming and they're not as traditional? Well, here in South Carolina, many of those aspects, such as seat time for credit and your traditional school day with the bell schedule, we're tied to that by state requirements. So we did have good conversation in the group about how could we make some changes within that, but raising our score a little, we would never probably get to the 8, 9, and 10 without probably breaking some rules, which we're not going to do. So I want to point those two things out before anyone gets alarmed with those. What we decided as a group in the end was that we wanted to focus on the initially on the robust infrastructure. And if you remember, Dr. Hefner last week did a report on the state testing readiness assessment for the online testing, which also talked about the need for us to improve our infrastructure to be able to test. So those two things aligned very well and gave us our goals going forward. So since April, and since those assessments, we've made some improvements. We've installed a new data center. It's in the building that you see here in the upper right-hand corner. The series of pictures along the bottom show the equipment that's in the racks. Now, if you're not a techie person, they don't look very exciting. But if you're techie at all, people that know what all this stuff is, they'll ooh and ah, and it's really a wow. So we're very excited about having this new data center in our district. We've also added technology staffing, thanks to the board for approving 2 additional networking positions for this year's budget. So we've hired those 2 additional people. So we previously had a staff of 2. Now we have a staff of 4 in our networking department, and they serve the entire district. So they are critical to us staying up and going. Also, we are still in the process of doing fiber upgrades and closet refreshes in all of our schools. And I put these pictures up here because that doesn't make sense to most people. And so if you see a picture, you can see what this looks like. And it's not just pretty. It does look a lot better from before and after. But what this does is it ensures that we have things connected in the right places, doing the right things, and maintaining or troubleshooting is a whole lot better when it's organized and neat, just like your closet at home. If it's not neat and organized, it's very hard to do your work. So I wish I could tell you that this picture was the worst case. It really was very typical of what was in a lot of our closets in our schools. So we are still in the process of doing these refreshing of the closets, and also the switches that these are plugged into, we're also upgrading those to a faster network, so it will benefit our students and teachers every day. Also, we have to thank you for the technology fee. We wanted to increase our students' access to devices. As the district team met, it was interesting because, as you know, we've been one-to-one in grades 6 through 12 for a number of years now. But our elementary folks really spoke up and said, well, we don't always have devices available. And some of our schools said some of our students don't take an iPad or a Chromebook. And some of those reasons, as we drilled down, were because of the insurance fee that we were charging parents. So we want to thank the board for making that change and Mr. Richardson for leading that. So our technology fee has ensured that every student whose parent wants them to have a district device can get one. It leveled that playing field. And so it's allowed, at current, 98% of our students have received Chromebooks. This is in grades 6 through 12. The remaining 2% are various things. Some students bring their own device. Some students might have special circumstances that they're provided something other than a Chromebook that's appropriate for their learning. And so you can see our students here in their seats with their Chromebooks. We've had great reports from our teachers as well, and parents are very happy. Okay, our next steps. Last spring's Future Ready assessment was really just the beginning. From a technology standpoint, we're going to continue to enhance our network infrastructure, and we're now planning for disaster recovery with off-site backups of our important systems and our data, as well as guidelines and procedures to be sure that we're consistently working as a system across all of our schools. The instruction department, led by Dr. Melton, will continue to refine the plans for the I-5 Technology Initiative, and our district team will reconvene this year sometime to gauge our progress and to continue to plan for our students to be ready for whatever the future will bring. Tom Murray, who is our fabulous consultant, he drove home this idea during our intensive 2-day study. He said, sometimes it's our own lens that gets in the way. It's our own mindset that can inhibit our ability to see things differently, to ultimately redefine what's possible. So with our Future Ready tools, we look to do something transformational and do everything with the lens of student-centered student achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garris. Do any of you have any questions for her?
Ms. Hammond. Make sure your green light
I know
is
it's,
on. It's on. Good.
Turn it off.
We heard you for a second.
I don't think mine's working. Oh, there it is. Thank you. This is technology, but I know we probably are, I think we didn't do the state required testing assessments this year online. Am I correct? I learned that from Dr. Melton. But I was just going to ask, with this update, do you feel like our kids, we will be ready with all the amount of wiring or whatever when we all get on testing at the same time during the pass, or the South Carolina Ready? Because I know that the state is moving us toward assessments, and there are students that would rather take it, paper and pencil. But I think that the way we're trying to go with this is online. So I just wanted to be sure we're up for it, and I wanted to hear from Dr. Melton.
Sure. Well, it's really a collaborative answer that I could offer. And would ask Mr. Richardson and Ms. Garrison, if Dr. Harris were here, he would likely weigh in as well. Dr. Hefner has recently found out that we are allowed the opportunity to request a waiver again this year. Our waiver for the academic year of 16-17, we did request some of the online opt-out of the testing online because we knew that we had pockets where we weren't comfortable nor prepared for it. So as we look for this year, Ms. Garris and her department, with all the upgrades that you've seen, she and her team are doing an analysis of where can we say that we can do it with confidence. The last thing we want to do is start a testing cycle online and only have it not be operable, to make sure that we can avoid the stress on teachers and obviously impact the success of students negatively. So once we get that analysis, we're coming together, Dr. Harris with his accountability department. We've reviewed the waiver that's been offered to us, and in fact, Dr. Hefner just got a revised form just last week. So we've been looking towards that, and we're going to bring our recommendation to the board because it would require Chairman Gant's signature if we were to decide to pursue that waiver for this year, whether it's pieces or whether it's all.
Well, I appreciate that that's what you're doing, because the worst is to start it and you don't have
Absolutely.
the capability, and then there are kids that are getting kicked off in the middle of their testing. They're already nervous. Teachers are nervous. It's just a whole new way of doing something. So I knew that we had gotten the waiver last year, and I think it's very bright of us to not start into it till we've got it all set up.
We are very cautious.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you for that report. As I'm looking at the district team, it makes me, it raises a question for me as to how do parents have a voice to discuss technology problems or concerns, and really to be able to be heard, not just one parent talking to one person, but to be able to get some input from, they're the ones that are working with their children at home, hear what problems the children may have or what concerns the parents have. And I do think that, and I've heard from several parents who do have some concerns, and I think that that's, to my knowledge, a missing voice. And I'd like to know, do we have parents, ability for parents to have their voice? And if not, is there a way for us to do that?
Absolutely. The Future Ready, when we started this process, we worked with the consultants on how to get started, there were two other components to add to our district team that, for the very first time, we actually chose to stay in-house so we could hear our teacher and administrator voices. So we didn't include parents or business partners and community partners in this first phase. And we really did that for the reason Dr. Melton and I sat and very purposefully chose the people that were on the committee because we wanted it to be very open and honest. And sometimes teachers or even administrators, as we're talking about through the self-assessment, we wanted them to be able to talk very freely. And sometimes it's hard with other people in the room. And so we felt like as a baseline for us to start, that was where we would start. Future Ready is just the beginning, and so we plan to continue that district team, and we can bring in other voices of parents and business partners. Looking at all the gears, we wanted to start with ourselves, if you will, to reflect on what we were doing, and then we would hear some other voices. So that is a part of Future Ready, to make sure all stakeholders are involved. So we do plan to expand the team.
And what's that timeline?
We haven't set a new time to meet for this next group. We met about 2 weeks ago. Dr. Melton, the instructional technology team and technology team, we met. We did not create a timeline at that point.
I would hope that we could do that, not wait a year,
Absolutely.
so that it's a real part of this. And just as you said, that there are times when you need to have certain groups together.
Right.
I think it would be wise for us to not include businesses with parents, and certainly have parents from all grade levels or all different areas in our school district, elementary, middle, and high. And I think that if they have the opportunity to come forward, and there's nothing wrong with a large group when you're trying to get some feedback and some good information on what we can do to make it easier for the parents and help solve any problems that they or their students are experiencing.
Right. And we would seek parents, a diverse group of parents, just like we did a diverse group of staff members, absolutely.
And do you think we'll hear back from that, or can we hear back from that after that occurs?
I'd be glad to come back if you would like me to.
Yes, I would. I don't know about the rest of the board, but I
Sure.
certainly would.
Mr. Cates?
That is something I would echo, and kind of thought that might happen. I don't know that I need that particularly, but it's outstanding work, and I appreciate the caliber and the quality of the team that was assembled. But it did strike me that there were no other stakeholders on that team, and having served on those teams, and maybe I'm the one that caused you not want to have another parent on a team. No, I know that's not your desire, but I do think that'd be valuable, because they do see, hear, and process that information, and when they're in the room, I think sometimes that helps you, us as a district, you as executive board, and in the district office. That helps a little bit to get that message through those parents that are in the room. So I echo that. And the mention of the waiver, if we do seek that, an additional waiver this year, I would appreciate some report back as to why and what's missing, because I'd like to think that we could make significant progress to where we don't need that waiver. So if it's resources that are missing that the board needs to know about, if it's simply, I can't begin to fill in the gaps. That's not for me to do, but I would like for those gaps to be filled in if we do seek the waiver this year.
Ms. Hutchison?
I wanted to ask about the infrastructure. The picture in the upper right, you said, is of the building. It's not very clear to me. Is that a portable?
It looks like a container. Let me see, go back to the picture. Oops. So it's not portable in the sense of our portable classrooms that you're familiar with, where you can pick them up and move them easily. This is on a cement slab, and it was brought in by a crane. It's very, very heavy. It would take a lot for this to be damaged or to go somewhere. So it's a steel structure that's very, very sturdy and much more than a portable that you would see as a classroom. So it's very different. It's made for this kind of inside.
You know, I'm thinking of tornadoes and hurricanes, right?
Yes, ma'am. I think this would withstand a lot. I couldn't give you the specs on it exactly, but I would go in there if I were you to be very safe. But we are working on a disaster recovery plan. That's what I said is one of our next steps. And one of the things about disaster recovery from a technology standpoint is having an off-site backup system. So that is, we've started that process now. So down the road, I can update you on that as well. But it's hard to tell from this picture what it looks like, but it is definitely not portable.
Thank you.
Ms. Hammond.
That makes me think I don't know which picture it's on, but it's up here where you have fiber upgrades and closet refresh. Yeah, that one. Are most of those, I just know since I teach in a middle school, are those usually in a closet?
Yes, they
Because-
should be. Not every single one is. Every school has a main closet, and then you have peripheral closets, if you will. Some are in small locked closets, some are in storage rooms. They're in various places.
Do you have any, like in a teacher workroom?
We have one, and it is currently being moved.
Thank you, because that's really not nice for teachers to sit at a round table and one of those, it's right up over them and you have to move around for it.
We
So I
have
was
one
hoping-
that, it's in a corner, actually, so it's not really in the way, but we don't want that there. We want
yeah,
it in a
it's still-
secure place, so we're moving
Thank
it to
you.
a storage
Thank
closet.
you. I just wanted to be sure. I thought we didn't have any left,
Just one.
other than away from where someone is sitting, either working or eating. Thanks.
Ms. Hutchison.
I promise this will be my last one.
Ms. Garris is enjoying this. It's good. It's your area, right?
Sure. I'm looking at your future-ready framework and where you have data and privacy. I'm wondering if that does include cyber attacks, and do we have a plan? Are we in the process of putting together a plan for cyber attacks?
So data and privacy does include that. That is also part of robust infrastructure. There's many of the subcategories as we talk through them, they overlap with one another. In our new infrastructure, we have several pieces. A new filter. We have some very high-powered firewalls in place as well. We have 4 firewalls, 2 on the outside, 2 on the inside. And those have so many settings, they have so many reports. And I will say, as I've used the analogy with this new data center, it's like building a house. So you build the house, and then you fine-tune all the pieces in it. So at the end of this month, as a matter of fact, we're sending 2 of our network team members to a state-level cybersecurity training. So that is something that we definitely are focusing on, as well as education to our staff members on how to recognize phishing emails, how to have strong passwords. We've actually just implemented a program for that as well, so that there's 2 pieces to that. One is what we do from a technology standpoint, but 2 is how we inform and educate our staff members so that they're aware of these things and know how to recognize some of the more basic attacks that could happen.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Garris, and we look forward to hearing from you from the next steps that we take. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next report is one that we're delighted to bring you. We received word just a few days ago that we have received a new magnet grant for $13.7 million over the next 5 years. And who here to update us is
The director is going to be coming forward, and as Sarah makes her way to the podium, I'd like to pause to recognize others who were instrumental with the process of preparing this magnet grant, but also those that are now responsible for the oversight of the implementation of this grant. So first, I'd like to recognize, I'm going to start on the far back, Mr. Pollock, principal of H.U. Corley Elementary. Beside Mr. Pollock, thank you, he always appreciates applause. Beside Mr. Pollock is Mrs. Long. Ms. Long is our principal of Leap Park Elementary. Ms. Lagance, principal of Nursery Road Elementary, is in the back, along with some of her staff members I see. Here on the front row behind me is Mr. Regal, principal of Irmo High School. And in cooperation with Irmo High School is Dr. Gates in the center. And then our magnet writer extraordinaire is Allison Kirby, hidden in the back there. So this, of course, was a district effort with all of our departments working collaboratively. We've just held our first stakeholder meeting today that was inclusive of all departments. But Sarah is a little passionate about magnets, so we've asked her to give a brief overview. So tonight, she's going to give you an overview, and she is welcome to be invited back to the board for more specific information should you choose to have more. Sarah.
Great. Honorable Gant, board members, Dr. Hefner, and executive staff, it is my pleasure to talk about my passion, magnet schools. So we are thrilled. As Dr. Hefner said, we just received $13.7 million over 5 years to add 4 new programs to our existing magnet choices that we've developed over the last few years. And you also heard who the principals are, so let me just give you a little idea of the theme. At Nursery Road Elementary, we'll be putting in an arts integrated magnet, which also will feature some visual, performing, and media arts. At Leapart Elementary, where we have had our STEM theme, we're revising that STEM theme to a STEAM, which is adding the A for the arts and the creative process. Then at H.E. Corley, this is very exciting, we're going to be bringing public Montessori to our district. So that will be at H.E. Corley, where they already have the Leader in Me, and this will complement that. And then a very exciting program is the IB International Baccalaureate CP program, which is their career-related program, which is relatively new for IB. And that is why we have the partnership between Irmo High School and our Center for Advanced Technical Studies, because you must be an authorized IB school, which Irmo is. Students must take a minimum of 2 IB courses, and then they would follow a career path of very high-end careers. And so this is quite an outstanding opportunity, and we're thrilled. So as we grow our choice options in our magnet schools, we're very cognizant of providing pathways of studies for our parents and the community who commit to a particular program or theme. And as one of our additions that we'll be providing pathways is we'll be adding 6th grade Escalaris here at Irmo Middle School next year. So I invite each and every one of you to come out to our first Magnet Fair November 9th. It'll be at Crossroads, where you can get all of the information you could possibly ever want. And we will be sending formal invitations for that. And thank you.
Questions?
Right.
Ms. Wheeler, we have the usual round of questions. We're going to start with Ms. Hammond. That's great news. One thing that I missed, I think the audience missed, and if you'll allow me, what was the number you gave again? What is that magic number?
$13.7 million.
Okay, I want to make sure.
Just make sure you got that.
That's awesome, yeah.
Is that Lisa Brooks in the back here? Oh, yeah. She's so excited. Oh,
It is awesome.
Ms. Hammond.
I just was going to ask, it has to, was the grant money, because I know it always has specifications.
Yes.
Is it only for any new programs, or can any of the existing magnets have any of the money?
yeah, this is
It's
seed,
new. I get
it's
it.
seed money.
Seed, I got
And
you.
one thing they did learn over the years, after people telling them, 3 years is just not enough time, when especially you're not awarded the money until literally the end of September. So they finally did listen, and under the new ESSA law, they did increase the lifespan of it to 5 years, because you're beginning to see the changes take effect by 3rd year, and then the funding is over.
So like where it's just adding really to the one existing, like at Lee Park?
Yeah,
It's-
what you can do is, it's called significantly revise.
I got you.
And so that's what we did with the STEM to the STEAM. And Irmo, although they were part of this last grant with the International School for the Arts, this is a new program within the school, which was not part of funding before.
Well, one of the things that I think, and I know that the mind's already thought of this when you were working on it, but I think it's also a wonderful way to magnify the art center that's so beautiful at Irmo, and these are schools that feed Irmo, and I am just delighted to see Irmo in the spotlight with that.
Thank you. Yes.
Did you say fifth grade Escalaris? Sixth grade?
Sixth grade.
That made more
Yes,
sense. Okay.
sixth grade.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Congratulations to all. It is exciting.
Yes, not a lot of questions when you got 13.7 million.
That is a lot of money. That is awesome.
We'll hear more about that over the course of the next 5 years. At this time, we'll go to our enrollment report presented by Missy Wall Mitchell, our Director of Accountability.
Good evening. Let's see if we get the PowerPoint up. I'm here to present the 10-day enrollment report for our district. We've, I don't know how to work the thing. Okay, next slide, maybe. I don't know where, here.
It's technology.
It's, yeah. So
It's technology. It happens.
Okay, I was pushing the wrong button. Thank you. Our enrollment today, or on the 10th day of school, was a total of 17,228 students. That's PK-12, any child that we have some kind of custodial function for throughout the day. It might be just the quote regular student, it might be a 3-year-old coming in for special services. That's our total enrollment. The state EFA funded enrollment was 16,725. That's K-12 students, excluding students who are just coming in for special services. So it's a decrease from previous years. We're 116 down on our K-12, 94 on the PK, and 211 less than the projections. This shows the trend over the last so many years. You see we'd been sort of flat, and then we had about 4 years of continuous, and then we've had a dip. Whether this will, is this a trend or a blip, we'll see as time goes on. We know that there have been different factors that can impact this, including the opening of charter schools and the VC Sumner Institute. So, like I said, I think time will tell. Right now, this is just, like I said, the count on the 10th day of school. Here is that same number, but you can see the changes from year to year. Like I said, we went down from 116 after going up 265 from the previous year. Here is the chart that shows the enrollment versus the projections. And like I said, the projections are redone every year for 5 years out. I think for the last few years, the projections were lower than expected. And so they took that into account, and then you see then we had the dip. So we will see, like I said, next year I think they'll be controlling for some of that. Am I going in the right direction? Here's the trend information on our enrollment. I think I'm going, yeah, here we go. The difference of the 10th day with our EFA and total students. And as you see those two lines get further apart, that indicates the increasing number of our pre-K students. We do receive state funds for many of our pre-K students, but they're not EFA total funds that you see on the average daily membership reports that we give on 45 and 135th day. So the 10-day EFA count is to sort of keep apples and apples together. And here shows the enrollment of the 10th day enrollment and the 135-day ADM, and our budget numbers are based on 135. So, and this is a picture of long-term of 17 years of, or 27 years of the average daily membership. And you saw we plateaued in the mid-2000s, and then we saw a dip, an increase over the last 5 years. And then we'll have those 2018 numbers in the spring. So that's pretty much our enrollment report for the 17-18 school year.
Mr. Cates.
Excuse me while I find the slide. On page, it's my page 3, it's titled 10th day enrollment compared to projections?
Yes.
But I see in the note that that's based on the 45-day ADM. Can you just explain that to me, please?
Certainly. Around the 45th day, which is one of the official enrollment submissions we send to the state, we also give that information to the demographer, Dr. McKibben. He takes that information along with the school and grade level counts, along with other information regarding planning and building permits and demographer stuff, and pulls that number out and gets based on the school grade enrollments. And then he updates that each year based on the new 45-day counts. So that's his base, and that's the base he uses to go for his enrollment projections.
I think I understand. The title of the slide is confusing based on the referenced footnote, and I just wasn't sure if it was titled correctly. It says 10th day enrollment, but you're using the 45-day ADM. And that was my
Okay.
confusion there.
We can fix that. Like I said, the enrollment is the number of noses enrolled in District 5 on September the 9th. Those projections came from the 45-day report that the demographer got last year. So he releases his projections in January.
Good. Ms. Hammond?
My question is more of how we're using the data. I'm wondering if we're able to use Dr. McKibben's data to better distribute students so that one school is not so overcrowded if the attendance lines sort of are similar. For instance, Lake Murray, which is so overcrowded because it's got 961, and Ballantyne, which, they aren't far from each other as far as attendance, and it has 581. So I don't know if that's something with Dr. McKibben, whether it's that we as a district, Dr. Hefner, you take that so that we have the schools more evenly divided, because now on this end, we don't have the growth. I get that. So I know Nursery Road and Lee Part, I think, are the two smallest elementary. As I put the data down beside the middle schools and the high schools, they pretty much run very similar. So I think it's important that we can use this and not have one school so overcrowded, and then we have another school nearby. And I would hope that's something we can use from this data, as more, not a question in your data as much as how we use that to be sure we have, we don't have one school too overcrowded, where it's logical along the lines. And the only two, and that's the one I'm picking out, because and we have certainly heard from people in the public and from teachers that we do know that's overcrowded there, and there's some more subdivisions, I think, going in that area. I had some calls about. So can we use this, Dr. Hefner, to help
I think
us?
these data are certainly relevant to that, and I've reviewed your board policies just within the past week or so with regard to school assignment and changing attendance areas, involuntarily for people would
I get it,
require
yeah.
board action, but we will certainly take a look at that. I know that that we did in areas that are in the Lake Murray attendance area, but abutted Ballantyne and Chapin, offered the opportunity for them to go to the school that would either Ballantyne or Chapin. I think we had 42 takers this year, which is one of the reasons why Lake Murray's numbers went down from a little over 1,000 to 960. It is our expectation that those families will stay where they've chosen to go. I think what we've learned in year one is that of this is that we're more likely to get people to go voluntarily if they send their kindergartners rather than in moving a kid in third grade. because people would rather stay where they are than move. So we're looking at that. We're looking at some other possibilities, and we'll probably bring back some recommendations to you a little bit later.
And along that lines, I know that all of our schools are really good, and sometimes, I've had people ask me, well, are we sending the message that Ballantyne, since it was losing enrollment, that it wasn't as desirable as say, Lake Murray? And we know they are. We know that they're totally equal. So I would like to see us, and I'm glad you're going to do that. And I think you and I have had some conversations about that, because we have heard from even the teachers about the number of kids they're serving there.
Well, my belief. My belief is that I clearly think it's best for people to change voluntarily rather than to change involuntarily. And the situation we face is that sometimes new homes will be built closer to an existing school, and the people that you might be forced to move out are the people who've been there for years and have a real strong allegiance to the school. So it's a very delicate, sensitive area, and that's one of the reasons why I'm such a big proponent of choice. And we place our choice programs where we do have available space. And one of the new dimensions of our new grant is that there is transportation provided with it. So people would have an opportunity, they can no longer say, well, I can't get there, because we will transport them to some of our new offerings. So again, my belief after years and years of dealing with this is that voluntary reassignment is much preferable to involuntary.
Well, I would agree with that, but I think, I think we also have to look at sometimes you have to make hard decisions, and there are places that move quickly. If we can't get a school built in time to stop the overcrowdedness, and they've dealt with it since the bond was passed, the overcrowdedness at that one school. And I agree with you. Nobody wants to take the arrows of rezoning a group of kids that don't want to go. But I think it is something we at least have to have the conversation.
Ms. Hutchison.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you for breaking out the numbers so we show the total enrollment, 17,228, compared to the EFA-funded enrollment. I think that is really important. If I did my math correctly, that's a difference of about 503 more students that we're serving. And I know the students are served in a variety of ways, but I think it does explain staffing needs and facility needs. Certainly, these students are spread across the district, but if you look at 503, that's about the size of some of our elementary schools. So I hope that we will continue getting these numbers, and I really like this graph that Mr. Cates was referring to, that was showing the projections and the enrollment, but just to see a line graph showing how many students we have been serving that are not funded. I think that's real important for the community to know, and also for the board to know. I think it's a hidden number, not that anyone's trying to hide it. It's just that we're always focusing on state funding. So I applaud you for putting that in here, and hope that we will continue to break these out.
Certainly, and I want to clarify, some of those funding is like early childhood funding or federal funding for like the 3-year-old children and some of the 4K, but they're not part of the EFA funding.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wall-Mitchell. And now we'll go to number 4, which is our test score accountability update. If you would proceed with that. Thank
Certainly.
you.
And while that's loaded, I want to give a shout out to the hardest working group of people I've ever gotten to work with, and it's those folks right over there, whether it's collecting Power School information or writing grants or running testing programs. They are wonderful at what they do. They work hard. They make hard things look easy. One of our team members is at training right now. He's been instrumental in our D5 dashboard. If you haven't had a chance to look at that yet, I recommend it. We have an internal version, but we also are putting out a public version on public data that is available for the public. And we have our test score information on there. We have enrollment information on there, and as data becomes available, we'll be adding and adding to that, so.
Ms. Mitchell, could you get that group that you were pointing out to stand up? We'd like to give them a
Yes,
round of
y'all
applause.
stand
for
up.
great work.
Yes, they did all the heavy lifting on all the stuff that I talk about, so. I think it's thinking about running forward on the standardized test scores. Can I borrow your, it's almost there. But I can, there we go. I'm going to talk about some of the standardized test results that have come out. We even had some that were released today, and then sort of segue into the proposed ESSA accountability system. The ESSA accountability system has been sent up to the federal level. It's being reviewed by the U.S. Department of Ed. It's been approved by the Governor's Office and the Oversight Committee and the State Board of Education. When we get that feedback, we'll have a better idea of how our schools will be rated and judged. But we're pretty sure that what we've got is, there might be some tweaks. We'll know when they tell us. But the first thing I wanted to point out is the SC Ready scores. This is the second year we've given those, and I'm going to figure out how to do the pointer. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm technically challenged today. And then, thanks. And then it went away again. So on your PowerPoint, the first slide shows the SC Ready scores for the district and the state in math, and compared to the, for ELA and math for the district and the state. Generally, we saw there was an increase statewide in the number of students that were not met. We're not sure why. There could have been a modality of the test. District 5 had a slight increase, smaller than the state. Our percent of students that were exceeds remained about the same. Like I said, this is the kind of chart where we like blue and we want less red. When we break it down by year to year, you can see this first slide here. This is our math. Shows the two bars on the right are the district in years 16 and 17. Yeah. Oh, okay, there it goes. Thank you. There, thanks. And then over here, South Carolina, and they had a slight dip in their math, not to the level of ELA, which was, here's the ELA chart, where you can see the slight increase in the percent not met in ELA. That's sort of unusual in a year 2 of a test, so we'll be monitoring that over time and see what's going on. This was a statewide phenomena that I think they're looking into as well. So. Science is on SC Pass. That we don't have comparable information but prior years because the whole test was, they rescaled it. We had new science standards and teams got together and reset the standards and put it on the 4 levels like you see on SC Ready. And you can see our student or science, we had over a third of our students that exceeds on this first pass of the science test. Here's social studies. It is still on the old 3-point rubric that or performance levels that you saw with in previous years. And once again, our District 5 students it's pretty stable over time, and it generally outperforms the state. We'll have new performance levels and new standards set for social studies next year. This is Algebra and English 1 end of course tests, and these are taken by students who take these. If you take Algebra 1 or English 1, you're required by law to take this test, and it counts 20% of the student's final grade. These are going to be used to determine the achievement levels for the high schools on the accountability measure. These 2 scales tests have also been rescaled. They, quote, made them harder, so to speak, because the requirements for the original end of course was just did you meet the minimum for like English 1, and now according to ESSA, our tests and our scales need to be measuring whether you're college and career ready. So both of these tests were rescaled this year. And then here are the biology and U.S. Constitution. These will be components of the accountability test. And once again, our students have been doing very well in biology, where over half received an A on that test. U.S. History and Constitution, which every student takes as well, and usually in the 11th grade, is, quote, a more difficult test. Those standards are a little higher. But once again, our students outperformed. SAT is going to be, you're going to see that on the report cards. This is the new version of the test. We don't really have comparable results for that again. This was the one that, we were at 1,600 points as a total, and then it was 2,400 points. We're back to 1,600 points, but it's a different scale. There are some concordance tables, and we're looking into that. Right now, College Board is not publishing their results, going backwards, and we're waiting to see how they do, because if they don't do it, then we don't want to do it either in case they have concerns. But for right now, the district exceeded the state and the U.S. An interesting point of this is South Carolina exceeded the U.S., which has never happened before. And so I think that's raised some eyebrows, but it might say something about the test might measure closer to our curricula. Here are the district, state, and U.S. for the two portions, and you see that the evidence-based reading and writing, which used to be reading, there's writing in components where students have to read a text and draw information from it. Our students were 561 and 554 in math. Okay, here's ACT, and this is the percent that these are for the class of 17. There's also a state where South Carolina makes most of our 11th graders take the test. These students would have taken that test 2 years ago. Those results have not been released by the state, but these have been released by College Board. And it shows that the district is above the state average on the composite score, slightly below the U.S. average when you look at this, but that's when you compare just the districts, or the states, that test all their students. The U.S. average was 19.8. So, and then here's work keys that came out today. I don't think that was in your packet, the hard copy, because it was embargoed up until this morning. This is a test that our 11th graders take, and it shows get these different performance levels of bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And pretty much if you have a platinum, you're ready for almost any job they have in the ACT job bank. Gold and silver still like a third, and more than that. Students can use this on their resumes and applications, and it's sort of credentialing them for jobs. Okay, so now that was sort of like a flyby of the standardized test scores that we have. The work keys, we might not have work keys. I think for next year, we'll have something this spring. It's out on RFP. It could be another college or career readiness test, but like I said, that's just one of those, we'll find out when they tell us. It might be January. Here's a slide that you've seen many times. It's the profile of the South Carolina graduate, and that was the foundation when they started building. We have the requirements in the ESSA law for our accountability system, and the state wanted to incorporate these information. One thing we've learned, and it tries very hard, is that most of the accountability system is still in this little quadrant right up here, language, arts, and math, college, and career readiness. Superintendent Spearman would like to see more information on these other aspects that make a graduate, and so in future iterations of the plan, that's going to be our goal. I think they've already created some task forces to start looking into ways to measure some of these other world-class skills and life and career characteristics. So, and this is the quick overview of how the system works. It's left over from AYP. Yeah, it's not really, but it worked in 2008 and it's working now. It hasn't gotten, as a matter of fact, I think it's probably gotten a little more complicated. What we have are the goals, or the ESSA goals, is that 90% of our students will be a level 2, which is met or approaches. 70 would be 3, met or exceeds in ELA and math. 90% of the students will graduate in 4 years, and we've got 2 of our schools are already at that limit, and so, or that rate, so we're pleased with that, because this is our 2035 goals. 70% of English language learners will achieve progress, and 90% will be college, career, and citizenship ready. So just based on the information that the the Education Oversight Committee and the South Carolina Department of Ed, these are the percent of schools that are meeting these criteria. So 2% at the ELA and math achievement level, a quarter of our high schools are at the graduation rate, and 5.3. So we've got plenty of room for improvement. These are the different indicators, and I sort of color-coded them because those are how the different data elements are going to be used to get these schools to get a rating. 2017 will be the baseline year. And then they're going to put 3-year targets every year towards meeting the eventual ESSA goals. So if you're in elementary or middle school, about 40% will be on the SC Ready scores. 40% will be on growth, achievement growth, the value added. Half of that will be all students, and then 20% of the rating will be on the growth of the lowest portion of your students. Then there'll be a student survey, and then at 10%, and then SC Pass, Science and Social Studies will make up 10% of that. That's for schools with less than 20 English language learners. If you have more than those, then that criteria kicks in, and these are the potential schools that we think they're close to that number. We'll know for sure when the time comes and the continuous enrollment and stuff. But these were ones that have a proportion of English language learners. So in that case, it'd be the 10%, and then it's 35% academic achievement and 35% growth. In high schools, graduation rate makes up the 30% and academic achievement. The prepared for success would be those U.S. History and Biology 1 scores, the student survey, and then the college and career ready would make up 20%. And I'll show you what those in a minute, how they're going to measure that. If you're English 20 or more English language learners, then the 10% goes to that, and they pull the number out of the graduation rate and the academic achievement. So this is how college and career ready can be measured. Sometimes when we look at these things that, I don't know, maybe about 8 months ago, I was in a conference call, and my concern was the whole plan was going to collapse under its own weight. And I guess that's where the people back there are going to help make sure that we get this data collected completely and accurately. But a student, which is good here, is you have multiple avenues to be college or career ready. So a college student would be, considered college ready if they score above 20 on the ACT or 10-20 on SAT, if they score 3 or higher on AP, if they score 4 or higher on IB, or have dual enrollment on STEM classes. Career ready would be a CATE completer with a national industry credential, and the Department of Commerce is working on those, determining what those credentials will be. The silver, gold, and platinum on the work keys, or there could be another test. So they'll maybe have to set some new things there. A scale of 31 on ASVAB. There had been some controversy or maybe questions about using that you could only use it if the students went directly into the military. I'm pleased that it was determined that they would use the score. If you had that score, you were qualified to go in. If you want to take a year off, a gap year, that wouldn't mean that you were not career ready, that the military was going to take you. And then finally, the completes a registered apprenticeship program. So now this was my slide of after they put all those numbers together, it comes up with a rating, and I just, right now, I'm not going to go into it because it's really, you don't care. When we have some actual data that will show how this works, and you get more points for their higher scores and things like that. But generally, at the end, you will have a school index of 1 to 100. And then with the ratings of how it goes, this is where there's a lot of angst at the superintendent's level on this, is that for this first year, how they will determine where those cut points are just by the percent of schools. So after they've rated all the schools, then they'll say the top 10% are going to be excellent, and the next 15% will be good, and then the 10% will be unsatisfactory. There was Superintendent Spearman spoke at the EOC meeting, and I'm sure EOC members agreed that if they're going to do this, it's fine, but you need to keep that target in place for a while so people can show growth. So right now, by definite, before we've done anything, we know that 10% of the schools are going to be marked unsatisfactory across the state. So we don't want that to be changing as you're moving growth, if the bar changes each time. So certainly it will change over time eventually, but that's where this is. We know when the results come out next year that that's going to be the breakdown, because it's going to be set that way. So, any questions?
Ms. Hammond?
Thank you. That was really good, and I'd just like to say for all the teachers in District 5, you need to just really pat yourself on the back when you look at the comparison. I mean, that's the most exciting thing out of what I saw. The alarming thing is the amount of growth that teachers do have to feel the pressure. As you know, teacher evaluations, we certainly as board members heard a lot about that. We've got this initiative of SLOs, student learning objectives. Teachers are having to do that. And what I see, and I hope our board will realize this and be compassionate in ways that maybe Dr. Hefner can think of ways to help our teachers as we're looking at how to keep teachers in the classroom. I think if we look at the environment and things that, it's not always money. It really is not. And that's what I hear our legislators say sometimes, it's just so much money, and, the biggest amount of our money goes to education and health care. But what I want to say tonight, and this makes me just even more passionate, and that's why I'm on this board, as a teacher voice, I really cannot tell you not only the chief administrators in a school, within a school, and those teachers, this pressure comes all the way from the state down to the classroom. And the learning goes on only in there when the teacher and the students are interacting. And the reason you have good teachers is because you have a good principal. And it really and truly, it just makes me so happy to see these scores compared to the U.S. and to the state, how we're doing. But what I want to say tonight is, however, I'd love to hear, or not to me, but to Dr. Hefner, I'd love for him to hear from teachers. And I know you have your committees and you do it, but I mean like we zero in on ways we can help take pressure off of teachers and how we can collaborate to share things one teacher's doing in the classroom that helps move these kids up. Because I'm telling you, if you're a teacher and you have something new coming down the pike every single year, not from our district, but from the state and from the federal, it's the teacher that's left with the pressure of the performance of the student. And there's just so many things a teacher can do. And we're doing it all in this district. But I just want to say hats off to what I just saw in these figures. And I'm not surprised. But what I do want to say is I want to know what we can do as a board in our administration that can continue to keep the teachers we've got. I'm just happy about this growth.
Ms. Hutchison?
I wanted to ask, the SAT, I left my hard copy at home, but I don't think you had the percentages of students taking that for South Carolina, the district, and the nation. And I do think that that's always important for us to keep in mind, because District 5 certainly does typically have a high percentage of students taking the test, which I think even shows more of a difference of the excellence teaching that's taken place. So I would love to see the percentages.
We didn't put it this year because this is only the students who took the new version of the test. College Board, there's a handful of students that are in that class of 17 that took the older version maybe in the fall of their junior year and didn't take it again. And so they were not included in these numbers. So we can get a percentage, and we'll probably have that in our dashboard of any version, but we didn't put it here because it doesn't include those students. College Board just put the new test takers in this version, in this test.
But wouldn't the South Carolina and US be comparing the same thing, the new test?
They haven't put those numbers out yet, so, but I would say, that I would feel confident that our proportion of test takers is among the highest in the state. But
Okay, but what you're saying, just to make sure I understand this, for instance, the reading and writing, 561 was, I don't even know how to read that.
I'm sorry,
looking-
561 was the average score for the test takers. There were probably about 900, I don't have the number in front of me.
Sure.
Of the students that took that test. That's the average score of those. So,
And so there would be a number, and I can understand that, I know you said you don't have it, but at some point, it's still the same new test that the South Carolina and the US, that we're comparing apples to apples here.
right, yes, these scores are just students that took the newer version of the test. Now, what proportion of that of the senior class might vary between the US or South Carolina and District 5? You know, we have students that probably take the test more often and later. They take it twice, and so they would be in this number where they might not be, that same proportion might not be comparable when you're looking at the state.
I got it. Okay, thank you for explaining that to me. And then back, just a few slides before this, when you were looking at the different biology and history and some of those, I think that you said that you couldn't compare because it had been reset or rescaled. But from an administration point of view, do you think this is an improvement? Where do you what's your gut feeling, even though you can't compare it to last year because it's not the same?
My gut feeling is that it is comparable to prior years. I don't think we've seen a big increase or decrease. I think the difference between 16 and 17 is a function of the rescaling. So,
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hammond.
Along those lines, do we still have an element in teacher evaluation of growth, Dr. Milton? Like say, even if I'm an advanced kid, is the teacher expected to show growth? Let's say they already got, a high level of achievement, and we all know sometimes that's the hardest kids to move up, but a teacher feels a lot of pressure because they're working really hard, but they're already, and you can show growth sometimes more with that C student, and you get them to the B. But I'm wondering when they evaluate this, does that, is there a play in there for just growth and not a raw score?
We have two different scales, though. What Ms. Wall-Mitchell is reporting is what we have as far as the compilation of all scores for students in School District 5. Dr. Jakes in the HR department, I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. Jakes, but our teachers write SLOs that you referenced earlier. They sit down with their principal and their school administrative team, and they write the goal based on what they see that they need to grow students towards. But we're not measuring growth with what some districts have done at EVOS. We declined that opportunity, Missy and Dr. Jakes, I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago. I've lost track of time.
2 years ago.
We opted out of that because we felt like that was not a fair model for School District 5. But Dr. Jakes may have more that she chooses to add to that, so, okay.
That's great.
So yes, ma'am, and no,
Yes,
ma'am. It's a little
no,
different than
that's
what-
good.
okay.
I'm glad to hear it. Then I had one other question, like about, explain it to me again why you can't compare. It's only because they've changed the whole scale?
yes, I guess let's say the amount of smarts to get an A is higher now than it was before.
And that was what I was going to ask. When we changed the new grading, and we voted on that, and I know that Molly Spearman said it was going to make us more competitive, even though there really, some of us worried some about that a 60 was passing, But to be competitive as a state, we did it. But I wondered if that shows up in this. I guess that's part of why they can't evaluate and look at last year to this year?
I think that's, that might be an artifact from that, because when they set these scales of what's going to be an A or B, a C or D, it's not on the percent correct of this test. It's done with this thing called item response theory, where it's like how much of ability in English do you have to do to get a C or a B or an A. And with that rescaling, they sort of raised the standards. So like I said, it's harder to get an A or harder to get a B. But in part of that was because they're using this for college and career readiness versus just have you done well enough?
Passing the course and making
Yeah.
an A or B. Okay, that makes sense.
See any more questions?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wall Mitchell, we appreciate that. And now, before we go to before I conclude my superintendent's report, I do have an announcement that I would like to make this evening. Serving as the superintendent of District 5 is an honor of the highest order. I will be forever grateful for the privilege the board has given me to serve in this role. As much as I love being the district superintendent, I'm very conscious of verse 1 of the 3rd chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes. Quote, "There is a time for everything and a season for every activity," end of quote. I'm very confident in my belief that it's time for me to move on to the next season of my life. Therefore, I have informed the board that I am planning to retire at the end of this school year, June 30th, 2018. I want our board, our staff, our students, and our community to know that I will continue to serve most enthusiastically as your superintendent until the date of my retirement. Furthermore, I assure the board of my prayers as you make a decision about who will follow me in this role. Once my successor has been named, I will work diligently to ensure a smooth transition of leadership. Finally, I want the record to reflect that I am most grateful to our board for its great vision and courageous leadership, to our faculty and staff for its unfailing laser focus on teaching and learning, to our students for coming to school ready to learn every day, and to our parents and the community whose support for our schools is legendary and has been sustained throughout multiple generations. Being the superintendent of this extraordinary district is a blessing beyond measure, and I issue my sincerest thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Dr. Hafner, on behalf of the board and the community, I want to thank you, and just very briefly, for the great stability you brought this district. We needed it, you provided it. The great leadership you've given, the vision that you projected for the district, and most of all, your integrity as a man of your word and your belief in public education. And I know many of us are just kind of grappling with how to grapple with this a little bit. But I want to reassure our community that we're going to move forward. We will, the good news with Dr. Hefner, he's told you a lot of it in that statement, is that he is going to vigorously continue in this job until July 1st. Something that I know very well is that he lives in this district and loves it. The true thing that's going to keep him here and keep him involved is the fact that he has 2 beautiful grandchildren that are going to be educated in this district, and I fully believe he'll be involved in that in this district for a long time. So would you all join me? We'll just stand and give you a round of applause early on.
All right, and that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Hefner. That will bring us to our public participation.